Book of 2 Esdras, chapter 16, and verse 1. Woe be unto thee, Babylon and Asia. Woe be unto thee, Egypt and Syria. Book of Haggai, chapter 1, and verse 6. You have sown much and bring in little. You eat, but you have not enough. You drink, but you are not filled with drink. You clothe you, but there is no warm. And he that earneth wages to put it into a bag with holes. All praises to Yahweh, by Shema Shai, Wahara Kakadash. Give honor to the elders and the apostles of the great millstone. Shalom to the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel. They're scattered abroad amongst the heathen. Some looking like the heathen. Begin with 144,000. Preachers, teachers, prophets, Shalom. And what we're witnessing is all countries, all economies, all people being affected, man. What's going on is, today, August the 1st, was the tariff deadline. Trump went mad and put tariffs on all countries. Alright? And this is going to affect those countries, their businesses, their consumers, which be their citizens, and most definitely it's going to affect America and the citizens, man, because everything is imported, just about. All right, you look on the tags, and anything is imported from these countries. All right, so the prices are going to be passed down to the people, as we've been telling by way of the Holy Spirit. But what's going on is, with America being the head, you're spearheading this thing, and everyone is being broken down, man. And everyone is being broken down to be oppressed, for our economies to be broken down, so they can bring in the digital system, man, which ultimately is going to lead to the MOTB. All right, everything is going to be unaffordable, almost. Some will be, in a little bit better situation than others, but for the most part, everyone will be affected. People already complaining and crying, everything going up. Okay, people struggling. Well, it's in the other countries too, but America's going to get it the worst. All right. So you got right here, I got two videos I'm going to play, and some headlines. But I'm just going to play the videos. I'm not going to talk, and I'm going to record the headlines of these articles. And I'm not going to talk. I mean, it's self-explanatory, man. So the second half of 2025, as we've been saying by way of the Holy Spirit, we're going to be live, man. All right? Just be prepared. Higher prices, more trouble, more chaos, more death, more theft. All right? More oppression. Okay? More heartache, more headache, more attitudes. Crime rate going to increase. All right? People going to lose out more. Okay? Shalom. Now let's play these videos. Who are the winners and losers after Trump's tariff deadline? As you see at the top, it says Trump's tariff rates for Asia. See, that's their continent, man. All right. So you see why we read Yahweh Shema Shai had me read that 2 Esdras 16. 15% South Korea, 15% Japan, Philippines 19%, Malaysia 19%, Thailand 19%, Pakistan and Indonesia 19%, Taiwan 20%, 25% India, 40% Myanmar, Laos 40%.
Higher rates that were anticipated. Yeah, let's actually get get to those tariff headlines because there's a lot to really go through, including that 20% on Taiwan, as we mentioned, but also Canada going from 25 to 35%. Avril Hong is here with a recap of what are those rates to watch. Avril.
Yeah, I mean, I think the simplest way to put it is kind of to put things into three buckets. So we have sort of the winners, and on the other spectrum, end of the spectrum, we have those that have been hit with higher rates that were anticipated. And you have the likes of Canada, as you mentioned, the raise to 35%, even though there are some exemptions. When you look at the USMCA, that is still a much higher rate than was previously threatened. You have Switzerland also on that end of the spectrum, 39%. And Taiwan, as you guys were just alluding to earlier, with that higher rate than the export rivals, Japan, South Korea, which have been hit with tariff levels of 15%. So you've got to wonder what that is going to mean for the export competitiveness. And then here in Southeast Asia, it's also worth noting that the likes of Thailand and Cambodia, they had been potentially grappling with 36% rate. So this is a positive outcome for them. I would just highlight the likes of Malaysia, that at 19%, this is really not that good of an outcome. When I spoke to the trade minister in May, he said that 10% would actually be a good outcome for Malaysia. And you may recall that Malaysia, as chairman, as chair of the ASEAN bloc this year, has been talking about how these tariffs really not a good way to kind of restructure global trade. They have been quite vocal about this, and they've hosted as well some of these Chinese leaders, including the Chinese president earlier in the year. So worth keeping all that in mind as context for what we're seeing today. Aside from that, the last bucket I would just highlight when it comes to Singapore and Australia, given this confirmation of sorts that the baseline rate is going to be 10%, that means that the previous concerns that it was going to be 15% for the likes of Singapore, potentially Australia, that kind of eases things a little. And don't forget, for the likes of Singapore, it has, that trade relationship with the US, is actually importing more goods from the US than it actually exports to them.
Black Horse.
Donald Trump's August 1st deadline is here. Well, almost. Tomorrow is the day new tariffs are set to take effect. The president's 90-day pause gave importers a chance to stockpile at a lower tariff rate, and many companies planned ahead, but some brands are already announcing price hikes. Joining us now, former chair of the Council of Economic Advisors under President Biden, Jared Bernstein, and director of economic policy research at Veda Partners, Henrietta Treyz. And Henrietta, starting with you, we know that prices are going to go up. At least we've had announcements from Adidas, Procter & Gamble, Walmart, Ralph Lauren, Mattel, Subaru, Nike. That's not a small amount of companies are more on the horizon.
Yes, more on the horizon. One of the biggest that I'm still waiting for right now is towards Canada, understanding what the tariffs are going to be there, if they're going to get that 90-day delay that Mexico just got. There are tariff hikes coming across the gamut of everything that you're buying for, vehicles, back to school, sneakers, anything you're using for camp and after school activities. All that stuff is on the chopping block and subject to what will be tomorrow as high as 40% tariffs on, sneakers and all the apparel you wear to spend your summer months.
Jared, the president continues to frame these tariffs as a charge on countries. So walk us through this. Help us understand by tomorrow when these tariffs take effect, if a product comes into the U.S. from another country, who's paying the bill?
The importer, the U.S. company that imports the good, they pay the bill, full stop. Now, after that, they try to pass that cost down the chain. So that means importers, then wholesalers, retailers, distributors, all the way down to the last person in that chain holding the bag, and that's the consumer. And the history of this, this is empirical work that we've done over the years, so this isn't that much of a guessing game, is that the bulk of the pass-through lands with the consumer. She's at the end of the chain. She's the one who's going to feel the most of this, and as you've suggested, we're already seeing signs of that.
And Henrietta, as you can imagine, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has a take on who's going to pay for this. Here was his comment right here on this air last week.
who pays the tariffs is a choice. And what we've seen thus far is that the manufacturers are eating a substantial portion of the tariffs and taking it into their profit margins.
So is it a choice? Will the companies then absorb the costs, or are we going to all pay more for all of the things we like to buy?
Yeah, no, the data is exactly the opposite of what Secretary Besson is suggesting. The manufacturers are importing even more of their products right now in the run-up to August 1st, tomorrow, because they know that the tariffs are coming. So they're trying to front-end load all of their inventory to help them mitigate what will ultimately be these 20, 30, 40, even 50 in the case of Brazil, tariffs on all their imports. So it's not that they're shifting their manufacturing, they're just pulling forward all their inventory in the hopes of getting in ahead. That's going to come to a screeching halt at midnight tonight. And those costs are going to be passed on to consumers.
Jared, is this just the first sign that we may see inflation start rising? And could the effects of this start carrying through the third and fourth quarter?
Well, first of all, let me point out that there are two buffers in front of the consumer. One is the inventory buildup that you just heard about, and the other is what Scott Besson said, profit margins, squeezing profit margins. Those buffers are now demonstrably eroding. Companies can't do that forever. Eventually, the inventory build down gets run down, and at some point you have to start protecting your margins. That's where we're at right now. I do believe that we're going to see more of this. I think we're seeing the tip of the spear. And one reason I believe that is the list of companies you showed at the beginning of this segment. Now, every one of those companies know that they're getting on Donald Trump's wrong side when they do what they did, which is go out and say, we can't help it, we're going to have to raise prices on consumers. So there are incentives for them not to do that. The fact that they're doing that, I believe, is going to give permission to many more retailers, wholesalers, distributors to start passing prices through, again, ultimately to the consumer. So I'm afraid we're going to see more of this as the trade war goes on.
Henrietta, let's talk about the new tariff threats against India. I know it's head spinning, hard to keep track of all of these, but tomorrow we're going to see tariffs go from 10% to 25% for India. And there's also the looming threat that President Trump could impose a 35% tariff as a penalty for their dealings with Russian energy. So what products could further be impacted?
Right. These are all your electronic components, everything from a computer to a calculator, textiles, rugs, home furnishings, all of that is going to get a very high 25% tariff rate. And the one thing I'd like to point out here is that even though manufacturers are trying to downplay, or they have been at least until recently, trying to downplay the impact of these tariffs, the American public is incredibly attuned to the fact that these are taxes that they have to pay. A CBS poll that came out this morning shows 66% of Americans, a huge number, believe that their costs of everyday items that they're going to buy in the next month are going to increase either a little bit or a lot. That is a tremendous amount of digested knowledge that Jared and I would both agree, for an economic perspective, is tremendous awareness on the part of the American public. And the India pieces, Brazil, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, they're all going up at midnight tonight.
And still the president is charging ahead. The president is applying, Jared, a 50% tariff on Brazil for what appears to be just political pressure. What will happen if these tariffs are started, or if he's starting to use these as a tool to accomplish foreign policy goals?
One of the main things that happens on the back of that is something that I think has been somewhat underappreciated. Yes, August 1 is the deadline. This does not end tomorrow, by which I mean tariff chaos, Trump pressing his leverage, back and forth, deals going on and off. That is going to be ongoing. It will probably be ongoing until he leaves the White House. One of the reasons for that is that there are all these side deals being made. You've probably heard about them. Hundreds of billions that countries are promising to invest in the U.S. and buy energy. Once you look at those deals, they are as flimsy as can be. And Trump eventually will recognize that those promises, in his mind, are not being kept. So it's back to the bargaining table. So my concern is that this ongoing uncertainty, chaos, the consumer pain that Henrietta just took us through very eloquently, all of that is actually going to deepen. I wish it weren't the case. And I do agree with this very important point that people are onto this now. If you go back a few months, people thought tariffs were a good idea. Now they're really seeing the other side of that equation.
Jared Bernstein, Henrietta Treyz, thank you both.
Pizza Inn presents I Ate at Pizza Inn. I ate pizza at Pizza Inn.
What I'll tell you, though, is I think both political parties are completely out of touch with the day-to-day lives of most Americans. There's a lot of polling out in the last couple of weeks talking about how frustrated people are with inflation and pricing and housing and things like that.
Inflation's at 2%. The GDP
Inflation's at 2.9%, actually, Harris.
The GDP just hopped to 3%. I mean, we haven't seen that in a very long time.
If I could point you to Fox's own polling, Trump is negative 30% on pricing and the inflation. It's as unpopular as Joe Biden ever was. So the American people are pretty frustrated with where their lives are right now. There's a Navigator poll out just this morning or yesterday that has a lot of Americans saying they're worse off than they were 6 months ago.
Caroline, I want to give you 10 seconds to respond.
President Trump is rapidly delivering on his economic promises, number one. And number two, a couple of those frontrunners on the Democratic ticket right now, or the side, I should say, Gavin Newsom, Pete Buttigieg, what do we know about those two? They're political shapeshifters. This is a test of how much they can absolve themselves of responsibility from the Democrats' extreme policies.